to All Roads Lead to Self-Discovery. Cool. Okay. Thank you for the silence, guys. So today I'm not joined. Today, I will hand it over to Vanessa, Tracy, and Kamal, all of whom have trained with Coach Arya. And they have super diverse backgrounds. They do work that's totally different from each other. And they took different paths to coaching and to Coach Arya. No, hello. But what was really interesting and how this webinar came about was that all three of them are doing different work around the ancient philosophies applications into coaching and self-development, self-discovery. And I thought it would be kind of cool to get the three of them connected and on a webinar so they can talk to us about this whole idea of bringing ancient philosophies into this world that connects us all, which is coaching. And what's fascinating is, there's so many practical applications of these ancient philosophies, and we don't really think about that because even using the words ancient and philosophy, it just sounds, I don't know, just sounds a bit academic maybe, or just doesn't sound super relevant to what happens today in 2021. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it's this century. That's a whole different topic. Time sucks. But yeah, there's many applications. And these three ladies happen to be working on various aspects of that. And all these three ladies happen to be working on short courses / 30-hour electives at some point for Coach Arya. So part of this webinar definitely is to showcase what we can offer to all of you in terms of learning. And I want to make sure that we're transparent about that. But that's the kind of byproduct. If you end up being interested in doing these kinds of programs with us, awesome. But in general, the goal today is to surface how at Coach Arya we bring in those ancient philosophies into the world of coaching and self-development, self-discovery, and how these three amazing women are specifically applying those concepts into their work, into coaching, and into work on themselves, I think, as well, is fair to say. So I will hand over to Tracy, who is going to run the show. There you go. See? No takebacks, Tracy, no takebacks. And these ladies will tell you about their programs, their work, themselves, and how all of that leads to self-discovery.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, I will start off with the introduction, and maybe we can do just a round of intros if that works for everyone. My name is Tracy. I am currently located in Toronto, where I'm on vacation, but otherwise living in Vancouver, BC. And as Magda said, I'm an alumna of Coach Arya. And in addition to coaching, I also have been learning about meditation, both as a meditator and also as a meditation teacher. And the road that led me to where I am was a very, very twisty, turny one, and definitely not, I think, one that many of those who knew me back then would have predicted that I would be here. I was very much focused on career and on sort of getting my validation through all of the external sources. And I went about that in a very committed way, spending a lot of time working, spending a lot of time networking, spending a lot of time socializing. I worked in the fashion industry, so that was really easy. And I found myself kind of coming to a head around 45, where I had an opportunity to make a change, and I did a really unusual one in that I quit my job and I moved to a foreign country, and I started a business, and I kind of started a new life there. And without getting into a lot of detail, that new life ended up taking on a lot of the patterns of the old one. So life just tends to do that when you don't start changing your being and you just change your circumstances. your circumstances have a way of looking very familiar to the ones that you were trying, or at least for me, that I was trying to leave behind. And so the road to where I am actually really began with deciding that I was going to commit to, I guess, my physical health and starting to go to yoga on a regular basis. And I did that at a studio. I was living in Nicaragua. That's where I had relocated. And the teacher of that studio was holding free meditations twice a week. And I started actually attending those meditations. And the funny part about that is I hated meditating. I actually used to, when I would do yoga and we would have to lay in Shavasana, I would just be trying to think of ways to get out of it. I would sometimes actually leave the studio before it would start if I could. And otherwise I would be lying there the whole time just thinking, when is this going to be done? Because I really could not stand to be alone with my thoughts. And somehow I started meditating, and that started opening things up for me. And through both connecting, I think, to my physical body, which I had really been kind of disconnected from before, and starting to take a pause and connect to myself through meditation as well. Then I started working through a lot of the traumas and a lot of the things that had happened to me, kind of worked on some emotional connection with myself. And I was also faced with a decision about what career I wanted to, career path I wanted to take, because I needed to decide on that. And I was drawn to coaching. And the rest of the story has led me here. But really, I'm really thrilled. The reason that I actually chose Coach Arya is because of the blend of ancient philosophy with modern science. That's really what drew me. I wasn't looking for something super corporate and super, even though that is here, but I wasn't looking for anything like, I really wanted to continue on the path that was really working for me. And so having watched some of the webinars and read some of the materials and reading, which I was really fascinated about mindlessness, I sent to Magda an email, and the rest is history. And I have to say that the program as well that I was on, and learning about self-coaching, and also even create your future, and then some of the reading that we had really has deepened this path and widened it for me in terms of self-discovery. So I've been talking for a while now. I want to stop. And so Komal, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tracy. It's interesting to know your story, and because I could connect with a lot of parts of it. And I think Vanessa would also connect, and a lot of people who are joining us in today's session would also connect that we've gone through certain ways in our life and then came to a point where we felt like, something needs to change and something isn't working out. Absolutely. And that has also been my story, so to say, which eventually led me to leave my corporate job, gotten into coaching, and then eventually connect to Coach Arya. And then to start looking deeply within self and trying to understand as to, okay, so what has happened in life so far, and where is it really going, and why things have happened this way, what could have I done, or what needs to change now. And in the middle of all of this, since we today are talking about ancient philosophy, while growing up, I've always got to hear about like, oh my God, you ask a lot of questions. You should have been a liar. My God, you're such a philosopher. Why do you have to go into the depth of everything? And I was like, oh my God, as if this is something wrong, because I don't know. I was really curious. I really wanted to go into the depth of everything which I didn't understand, and trying to find out like how really things are functioning. And I think if we notice children, or if we notice our own lives back, I think a lot of people would be able to resonate that we all had very deep inklings of knowing, what does it really mean, and to understand everything in detail. But listening that, oh, you are such a philosopher and all, sort of shut me down for a little while. And I started to carry on with the life, doing my degrees and studying, and then getting into the corporate, getting married, having children, family life and everything. The real introduction, although I've like born and brought up in India, though currently I'm living in Canada, there've been a lot of stories, there've been a lot of practices, like yoga was a part of life while growing up. Listening to Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, and all that ancient knowledge and wisdom, books of ancient wisdom, was a part of life. But it was never into that depth. It was like, okay, yeah, these stories are there, but what exactly is the essence of those stories, and how these stories can really help us make a worthwhile life and live happily and peacefully, was never a part of my understanding. But it all opened up when I one day picked up a book on Vedanta from the bookshop, and I was like, okay, I must read it. And that was the first book I read, which will come closer to whatever I would say ancient philosophy. And that sort of opened up my interest and opened up my mind and understanding from how we look at ourselves as mind, body, or energy organism, and what exactly is the reality. And then something very specific that I've noticed about myself is my mind. So, like Tracy, you've said that you gotten into this with your physical health. What brought me into this was my mind, because there are positives of being intellectually stimulated. There are a lot of drawbacks also, because you definitely need a lot more, and then your intellect has its pros and cons as well. So my need to understand everything was so dire that I just kept on reading new material. And that was also one of my reasons to join Acharya. Something similar like you, Tracy, like you said that Eastern philosophy meets the the science and psychology and neurology and all of that. And that was also my reason to join Acharya. And when I started to get into coaching practice, I started to see some parallels in what I'd read about ancient philosophies and ways. And I'm no master of it. I'm just the learner who has learned to connect the dots from the philosophy to the coaching. And the more I bring it into my practice and understanding, I notice and I see that it makes my coaching presence much better and better. And therefore, when Magda and Ram discussed about doing something with ancient Indian philosophy, and I was like, yes, it's like I wanted to do it, but somebody said it, and I was like, yes, I jumped on it. And all I can say is I'm still exploring the philosophy of Hinduism, and then Buddhism, and then Taoism and Zen. And I see there is so much of parallel, there is so much of interconnected beings. Like today, Magda wanted all three of us to connect because all our three ways are connecting. I'm saying these philosophies are so interconnected and interrelated. It is amazing to witness, and I am pretty excited to bring out whatever I've learned. But I think that's enough for introduction so far, and we'll discuss this further. Vanessa, over to you.
Thank you. My name is Vanessa Raimondo, and I too am an alumna of Acharya. And I think it's funny listening to both of your stories, Kamal and Tracy, that I feel even more connected to you than when we started talking about doing this webinar. And I have a feeling that our stories are really reflective of a lot of people's stories. So, historically, well, first of all, I I do coaching. I'm a coach, and I also do consulting. In the last, I would say, 15 years, it's predominantly been in the hospitality industry. But now with coaching, I'm opening up to other industries. And I've worked with quite a bit of young leaders. You know, as you might know, in hospitality, there's not a lot of people that go to business school, you know, and there's quite a few young, energetic employees that are then thrust into management positions. And I was one of those people. And so I did quite a bit of learning and self-discovery on that road, on that path. And, you know, like so many others, my wake-up call happened in the form of a health issue or health scare. And, you know, that's never a good thing. You know, our call to adventure comes in many forms. And sadly, sometimes it comes in the form of health scares. And so it really forced me to stop and reevaluate where I was and where I wanted to go. And I found that I didn't necessarily have the tools to do that. And what I thought was really interesting was it kind of paralleled the work that I was doing with my clients at that time. So, you know, the work that I did prior, I would say, falls squarely in the consulting space. So very much doing and telling, as opposed to coacharya and coaching, which is empowering. So I found that a lot of my clients were just asking me what they should do. Like, just tell me what to do. And in my head, I'm thinking, you know, my role is to help you create the dream business that you want. Like, I'm here to facilitate, to help, but it's not really my place to give you all those answers. And so I was finding these parallels between the work that I was doing and myself. And I couldn't answer those questions for myself, where I wanted to go. And then, you know, it was quite fortuitous or kismet, I would say, that I came across Coacharya in the form of a webinar that was truly inspiring. And like both of you, Kamal and Tracy, the idea that you didn't have to sacrifice this notion of spirituality and Eastern traditions and philosophies with Western philosophies and science. Like, there was a place where these worlds could meet and perhaps offer some deeper answers to the questions that we're asking of ourselves. So, you know, I again, like you, Tracy and Kamal, I immediately sent out an email and I was hooked, and I loved the way that our learnings were delivered through Coacharya, very much so. And as part of the course in the class that I took, this Create Your Future elective was just a part of the program. And to me, it was like not just a light bulb going off, it was almost like an atomic bomb exploding in my brain. You know, like, this is yet another example of how the convergence of all of these philosophies and of wellness and self-care and unconditional positive regard for yourself, like, all of these things, all of these paths converge into something that helps us see our future down the line and gives us something to kind of live our life towards, you know, with not necessarily an attachment to the outcome of what that end road is. You know, it's not about creating a roadmap, and if you divert from the roadmap, then, you know, things are awful. It's more like how do I keep coming back to this place of center and saying, okay, you know, this is where I would like to go. This is what's happening. So how do I experience that, and what do I do now? And so, like the two of you, that's my sort of long-winded introduction into how I was inspired to continue working with Create Your Future, and why I'm such a huge proponent of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are more interconnected than we knew, because my sideline for many, many years was also hospitality. And it still is to a very small extent with my business, but it really is not an area where wellness is encouraged, right? In fact, it's something that we often have to sacrifice for the business, in terms of not only the long hours and the intense pressure, but also the I think act of having to be on all the time really in some ways detracts that experience of wanting to travel within. I don't know if you found that same thing. But I really loved what you were sharing about how, as we're going through this, we don't want to get too attached to the outcome or to the specific directions that end us there, right? Or that we think are going to get us there. And I think about that often for myself, that feeling of we don't know, like when we think we're lost, it's like, how would we know we're lost? We have to know where we are, and we have to know where we're going to go to. And unless, as long as we know both of those things, we're never going to be lost. And I guess for me, the path, it's really interesting, because the path that I've taken with my own self-discovery has really allowed me to embrace that, what you were talking about, that unconditional positive regard for self. And I remember when I first learned about unconditional positive regard, I kept thinking about how beautiful that was in context of other people. And it really, really is. But it's really only been opening up for me, I would say, over the last year or so, where I'm like, wait a minute, like I really need to take this lens and apply it inwards as well. Like I absolutely cannot exist in unconditional positive regard with another human being when I'm holding judgment for myself. And so that's what I'm working on right now is like really, and the program that I have coming up, one of them is about wellness, and it's really about getting a sense of who, not who we are, because I hate to say that, but how are we showing up for ourselves? What is, not looking at what, is defined as being wellness out there, but what is our own expression of that? And where are we on that path towards that? And then also, what I'm starting to explore as well with this road of finding myself is also being able to lose myself and not be so identified with my sense of self. So it's this weird dichotomy where it's like, I'm looking to discover myself, and I'm also looking to know what that looks like and not be attached to it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
That's very interesting, Tracy, when you initially started to talk about hospitality industry, and that how wellness is not a focus of industry. And I would say it's true for almost all the corporate and the way the work is conducted. And I remember when I was in corporate, I was really cheesed off listening work-life balance. And I was like, what does it even mean? Is work different from life? Is it not a part of life? Are we not living when we are working? Or what we consider or term as a life, is there work not involved there? So what exactly are we talking about, these terminologies? And it occurs to me more and more. And then when you talk about the self, that though we want to discover ourselves, we are more focused outside of us, like having positive regard for other people, not thinking that we need to regard the same with ourselves also. And that's where I absolutely love ancient philosophy, because the discovery begins right from the two fundamental questions. One is about what is self, and the other one is about what is reality, But what is self is such an important question in ancient philosophy. And it is like the way to know outside is to know within. So it's like if you know yourself, you'll know everybody outside, or you will know the ways of the world, because it's the same way. And I wonder, where does the entire system goes wrong, that we study about mathematics, biology, geography, history? The only thing that's most important is what we do not study in our schools when we are growing up, which is like, who am I really? Who is this person within this boundary, and what is the reality of this person? And I think maybe that's a reflection into how we look at the world right now. And there are so many issues and challenges. And the problem is not that there are so many issues and challenges, but that we do not find ourselves capable to deal with those issues and challenges. And we find ourselves disturbed and stressed and anxious. And immediately the first reaction happens is to control outside, then to just sit back and look within and say that, okay, what's happening within me? Why am I getting perturbed with this? What am I thinking about it? And so that's why I feel that coaching sort of offers that platform where you have the permission to just slow down, sit back, look within. And what Vanessa also said also connected to me, where she said that a part of her job was, and that people were seeking, that she tells them the solution, they do this and it's easy way. And it is part of ancient philosophy and the Guru Shishya Parampara that when some disciple will go to the Guru or the teacher will never give you a straight answer and say, that this is the answer. No. The teacher will give you situations. The teacher will do everything to make you reflect and observe and learn on your own. So there is quite a lot of difference in the way we grow up, we get groomed, we study, and now in our, I would say, after living considerable part of our life, now we are getting to explore these new different ways of exploring, and I see a lot of value in it. And I think and I hope that more and more people can really experience these.
Well, what I thought was interesting about you said, Kamal, about the examination of the self not being part of education, or at least like the generalized education, I think it's even more tragic that the idea of majoring in or taking philosophy classes in higher education in college is almost ridiculed. Like it's like, oh, well, what are you going to do with that? When in reality, I suspect that if more people took philosophy, or if it was ingrained in the greater education, that that we would see more expressions of empowerment, more expressions of the idea of knowing where you want to go, and understanding the need for self-care. And I hate to use work-life balance as well, but really examining what that means to work and to to have work as part of life, and how does that integrate as part of the whole of who you are? But I suspect that part of that ridicule that philosophy receives goes back to kind of what you said, Tracy, that there are a lot of people, myself included, that for a long time I was afraid of the quiet. You know, I would go to sleep with music on, or just have the TV on or something, because it was too difficult for me to connect with what would come up in those periods of quiet, where that is exactly what I needed to do, is to connect to those periods of quiet, to go through that hero's journey, that self-discovery, and to really start to feel the questions, you know, even though that the answers aren't immediately there, just to start understanding what the questions actually are.
I noticed a very interesting observation Jules has shared. I've been using the term work-life integration rather than balance. Balance seems like an unattainable farce in today's age with our phones in our pockets. That's quite interesting observation.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think I remember hearing Ram say that on one of the webinars, that work-life balance doesn't exist, because then it's whenever we find it's in balance, something is going to change. It's going to be off balance again, right? So if balance is the goal, I think we're always going to feel like we're chasing something that isn't there. Whereas integration is a much more attainable and realistic way of thinking about it. And it's interesting because I've realized, I mean, we're all very fortunate because I think we're very passionate about what we do. And so we can also talk about work-life integration, and it's not perhaps the same for us as it is for others that are in a situation where maybe they don't have the same feelings about work. But I thought maybe this could be an opportunity for us to explore amongst ourselves what is, I think, in ancient philosophy, and that's just learning how to not be in conflict with what's happening right now, even when it's not what we want. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I love that. And I am still with that word integration, because what you said, Tracy, not being in conflict, and what was that there in the comment, integration. This word is very important. Integrated, it gives you a sense of whole. You know, it makes you feel that, okay, yes, something, nothing is missing. It's a whole, it's complete. And somewhere deep down, that's the reality that we want to experience in every living moment that we have. And that's what the ancient wisdom says also, that we are at all the time whole and complete. But all the stress, anxiety, and all the issues start to happen when we somehow fail to see and experience that we are whole. And then all this endeavor, and I'm happy that we've come to this word, and we've come to this part of being in terms. And it's so different from the idea of that there is a problem that you have to solve. But it's a completely different idea, that there is a situation and you got to understand it, and you got to first be at ease with it and see what is happening there. And then you'll realize that even though it may feel like a problem, but you can still feel whole, because so-called problem is the part of the whole in the given moment. And then to approach it, you will have a completely different mindset and completely different way of looking at life and things.
I absolutely love that, and what it made me think of is one of my very favorite quotes from Carl Rogers, and that's the curious paradox is only when I accept myself can I begin to change. And so, yeah, when we feel like a part of us is wrong in some way, and we're in conflict with it, then we're going to have very limited energy in terms of being able. We're not being in a state of acceptance. And what I think I'm starting, and again, this is like you said so beautifully, it's a learning thing for me. I'm not on the other side of it yet, but what I'm starting to try to embrace is the idea of anything that's happening within my experience is a part of me right now. So if I'm in conflict with that, then I'm again not accepting what's happening in the moment, and I'm not allowing myself to be whole and complete. So I haven't quite, like I said, that's a work in progress for me, but that's something that I've been working on, embracing.
Yeah, Tracy, what that made me think of was how difficult it was for me at the start of this self-discovery journey to articulate, and I still find it difficult to articulate sometimes. I think it's an ongoing process, but for sure, I think if it's not something that people are used to, this idea of self-exploration and self-discovery, that oftentimes you get hung up on the words and like how to express that and how to arrive at these insights for yourself. And for me, one of the most helpful exercises that we did was, or discussions rather, that we had was around metaphors. And metaphors as a tool for almost viewing yourself, or connecting to something that is not quite human form, but that you feel a connection to and that represents how you see yourself. And through that exploration, so for me, it's kind of fun, interesting. I had drawn a logo for myself for my business a couple of years before even starting Coacharya, and I just kept getting stuck on this image, and it was a hummingbird. And it doesn't necessarily directly correlate to the work that I did, but there was something about it that I connected to. And so I stuck with it. I drew it into my logo. And in going through, talking through metaphors, I was like, that's it. That is it. It's the dichotomies of this hummingbird that I connected to. And in diving deeper to what those dichotomies mean. So, we have not talked yet today about Carl Jung, but he's certainly not the only one that talks about dichotomies of shadow and light. And that's exactly what the two of you had been discussing. And I realized that it was difficult for me as well to not judge the shadow part of me. When, as you both said, Kamal and Tracy, that the shadow is a part of you. It's a part of who you are, and it's what makes you this unique and beautiful creature. So in the same way that one might hold a hummingbird on a pedestal, it still has its fierceness. It still has its, the shadow side of what that being is, but it's still a beautiful creature, and it's still, all of those things encompass what makes that whole, as you said, Komal, a unique and beautiful thing.
Yeah. There's a nice comment by Sylvia. It says, and to further add to what Vanessa said, leaders of countries are leading in making life-altering decisions for millions without completing any prerequisite of self-inquiry and discovery. That's so true. That's
Agreed.
so true. And that also connects to what you said, Vanessa, about the metaphors and not getting stuck to the language and the meaning we understand from particular language, because if we stay at the world awareness level, and we'll see that, okay, there are so many different languages and we are so different in so many ways. We eat different things, and we look different, our hairs are different, and it's so diverse. You get lost in so many differences. Whereas what metaphor does is that it doesn't get you attached with the language, but takes straight you to the meaning of it. So that's a way for us to not get stuck with the superficial surface thing. Like how we are expressing is not focused as much on as to what exactly is that we are trying to express, or what is the meaning we are deriving out of it. And Sylvia says perhaps disarms the ego. That too, but ego is also a very important aspect when we look at it from the Eastern philosophy or the ancient philosophy side of it, because and that's the most interesting part, like how ego is explained in psychology is very different from how it is understood. Again, it is also a part of the whole being of the person. So there is no fight with the ego also, but the idea is to become aware of what is driving and what need to drive in the given moment. And if we can get to that level of our own understanding, then we can take the right decisions. But I completely agree with you, Sylvia. I think we all do that. When we are not aware that we're being driven by our ego, we can make decisions which are not good for person, which are not good for countries, for world together. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Komal, you and I have had so many great discussions, which I have changed changed me, and I'm really grateful for that. And I know one of them is we had a conversation about that meaning of being whole and complete. And so what I always think of, speaking of metaphors, and I think this really ties in so beautifully to what you said, Vanessa, about the shadow, is the moon. So if you think about it, the moon is always there. Sometimes we may only see a sliver of it and the rest of it's in shadow. Sometimes we see the whole thing, but it's there, So we are all whole and complete. And the shadow is a part of our completeness. And yes, Koma, what you said, the ego, it's a part of us too. It's a part of us too. When we narrow ourselves to only operating out of that lens, then we are constraining ourselves. But we also, in this wider lens that we want to work out of, have to still know that that ego is going to be there in some form or another, right? And to know what that is. I think that now might be a good time for all of us to kind of chat about what it is about our own individual approaches that we're going to be looking at bringing into these programs that we have coming up. I don't know if one of you wants to start with that.
I can start with that. So the Create Your Future program is really the brainchild of the many years of experience of one of Kocharya's founders, Ram. And he had initially created this Create Your Future program, which I actually asked to help work on, because my life has changed so drastically by it, and I really believe wholeheartedly in it. And so in itself, the program is a blend also of Eastern and Western based approaches to self-exploration and self-knowledge. It's a blend of science and spirituality. We've talked about spirituality without religion, and it's exactly that. It's about coming to a place to uncover a deeper potential for ourselves through this kind of left and right brain exploration of ourselves. And the idea is on the other side of things to come out of the process and come out of this course, workshop, whatever incarnation it takes, with an empowered action state, or an empowered, inspired state, with fueled by the discovery that you've been able to do and that you've been able to work through. So, I had mentioned the metaphor and really discussing the metaphor, and that's one of the paths and the tools that we take. We also talk about, what discovering your passions and really taking the viewpoint that our passions are derived from what brings us joy. And so there is a rather in-depth discussion that happens around, well, digging into the past, what is it that has brought you joy? And how does that translate into what fulfills you today? And how does that then dovetail with what not only you see as your strengths, and essentially what got you here to today, but also what others see as your strengths. So this is a very much of a process that includes your tribe, your community, because the path to self-discovery is, yes, it's a hero's journey. It's one that you largely embark on your own, but it's also about the resources and the support that you have around you to help you through this self-discovery process. And that's very much emphasized throughout. And then, if we talk about sort of like the nitty-gritty parts of things, I think that most people have some understanding of how to create these sort of short-term goals, these 3 to 5 years, and then how do I get to my 3 to 5 years? But it's really that longer term, like what I like to call legacy. Like, what is the legacy that I want to leave? So this goes beyond what you were talking about, Komal. It's going past your wants and understanding the needs, because the needs, they serve you, but they also serve the greater good. And so in asking what your legacy is, you tap into both of those things, both of those worlds. And so from there, that becomes the tough part of it, is then how do you get from here to there? And that is the focus of a lot of the discussion that we do. And I think that if you were to read any sort of business books or webinars and things like that, everybody talks about having a plan. Like the most successful business people out there have a plan. But nobody talks about what happens before you have that plan. Like, how do you get there? And then you have that plan, and then what do you do? And so I think that what I find so beautiful about Create Your Future, it addresses those things that nobody is talking about. Everybody out there makes it seem like having a plan and then living by it is easy, but it's not. And there is sort of some intention and self-discovery that needs to happen to really internalize what it means to live towards this greater legacy vision that you have for yourself. And I think that some of the tools and the paths that we use through this process is really what brings the three of us here together today, because it's a lot of the wellness and the programs that you are going to embark on and hold courses around, and the talks that you are going to talk about, Komal, about Eastern philosophies and how they combine with Western philosophies, which is the grand vision of Kocharya and what makes it so unique. That these are some of the tools that then people can walk away with, and that become ingrained and part of internalizing this path towards the future. And for me, one of the biggest and most helpful areas of learning was in the area of journaling and self-coaching, which were hugely impactful to me. So, I talked about it a lot, but essentially, like, to me, the Create Your Future is about living the hero's journey and what that means, and what the different expressions of self-discovery that we can use to help us get there.
Beautiful, thank you. And as I said, it's a program that I took previously. I'm really excited to see this iteration of it. Komal, would you like to share what you have in the works?
Okay, so I'm working more on bringing in many philosophies, which include philosophies from Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Zen, as much as I can work around, and bring them together in the space of coaching, and basically to see that how we can, enhance the presence and being of a coach, or how we can really enhance the experience of coaching, leveraging on the knowledge and awareness and practice of the ancient philosophies. And why I say that, because there is so much of wisdom in this, and there are such practices which are really very, very powerful. And there was an interesting point which I would like to share here. When I was researching on something, I was going into the history of psychology, like psychology, how it came to be as a separate stream of study from philosophy. Earlier, it was a part of philosophy, but then it became a scientific study into human consciousness and human brain. And so the very initial schools of psychology, that's called structuralism, has a way where they said that self-reflection is a way to study and understand, what is consciousness. And then later on, certain other schools of psychology came, which said that no, self-reflection is not a valid scientific inquiry field. And they went to the other side. Well, it's not all that bad, because we did get a lot of other very interesting schools of thoughts in psychology. But what philosophy does is that it takes you further deeper into self-reflection, self-inquiry, self-observation, because it's not all that about science or causation. It's not at all about causation, but it's more about developing, inculcating the ability to see. So in philosophy, we are not doing because this happened, that will impact. No, we move on the other side and say what it is, what is happening, and what does it mean? How am I experiencing it? How am I interacting with it? And if we as coaches just go back to our coaching conversations, what kind of mindset, what kind of presence do we need? We do not need a causation. We do not need to find out the reason why the client is suffering, or what the client is happening in client's life. Why is it happening? Our role as a coach is to see and to help them see. Because it's by seeing the truth of the situation, it's by experiencing and acknowledging that they will be able to find some solution for themselves. So the way I look at philosophy and whatever wisdom it has, I see a huge potential that it has to really elevate our coaching practice from the way we all have been taught in our education systems, and then trained in whichever way. And so I think this is going to be quite important and quite valuable.
Sounds really exciting. As I said before, I know we've been talking about it a lot, and I think it's really going to be amazing to see it come together in the program. So we're going to be wrapping up shortly. I'll just share really quickly what I have coming up, and then we can all say goodbye. There are a few programs that we're launching, and I think, as Magda said in the chat, they're they're pilots. In particular, there's one that we have coming up, which we're really excited for, which is called Beyond Mindfulness. So as we know, mindfulness has become very much a catch-all, very much a buzzword type phrase that's used a lot lately. And we all know that we at Coacharia have a different perspective on mindfulness not being the end of where we want to go, and that we want to go further to what Ram calls mindlessness. And what is that? And really what this short course is going to be, it's going to be a very interactive one where we really explore what mindfulness is, sort of starting with that self-awareness that's needed for that, whether that's on a mind, body level, emotions, that type of thing, but then really moving towards the collective consciousness, a systemic approach. Because I think, as we all know, it begins with self-discovery, but it doesn't end there. We know that self-actualization, although maybe that's our goal starting out, we really want to be looking at transcending that. And we're all connected. We're not living as islands that are not, dependent on. We all need each other. We all need each other to continue to evolve and to continue to survive. So that's one of the programs. There's also a wellness program coming up. The details are on the website. That's about wellness coaching. So it's a 30-hour elective, and it's really looking at specializing in the field of wellness coaching and really helping clients through their own self-discovery and through their own self-determination access their well-being. And also, for those of you that are looking at coach training, Smita and I are going to be starting a life coaching foundation program that is also coming up very soon. I believe it begins in August, but I don't have that date right in front of me. Everything is on the website. It has been wonderful, wonderful being here with all of you. And Komal, Vanessa, do you want to come in and say goodbye to everyone?
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a lovely conversation. I mean, anytime we get to talk about the philosophy, it's a welcome space. But I do hope that everybody who's participated would have had something to take away from here. Thank you so much.
Great, Kamal. Thank you very much for all the participants on this webinar for coming today and enjoying this conversation with us. And thank you, ladies, for having this conversation. It was really, truly wonderful.
Day, week, and we'll see you soon.